My 23rd year spiraled when my best friend died, leaving me alone in college. My boyfriend, controlling and unsupportive, sparked my need for a male friend. I texted, shared my pain, and even cried in front of him. My boyfriend now questions my loyalty. Did I cross a line? It all began when I was in Brazil with my boyfriend 2 summers ago. My best friend from childhood tragically passed away in an accident. This was extremely difficult for me. I felt very sad and guilty because I had not spoken to him or responded to his messages in the previous 3 months, as my boyfriend told me I was not allowed to communicate with any other men, even my old friends. I left Brazil to attend the funeral, and my boyfriend was upset that I left since his family resides in Brazil and I was supposed to be staying there with them. However, I felt it was necessary to go. I recall feeling as though my boyfriend did not grasp the severity of my loss. Losing my friend left me feeling very alone and in considerable pain. In any case, my boyfriend and I had many arguments while he was in Brazil and I was at home. I remember expressing to him that I felt as though he did not care for me, among other things. He claimed he was trying to enjoy his time with his family, which I understood since he rarely gets to see them. However, we accumulated a lot of tension, and amidst my emotional turmoil, I ended up threatening to break up with him. We often made such threats but never seriously. I recall that this time he actually agreed. I insisted no, that I was just angry and figured, as usual, we would work through it. But this time felt different. He called me and expressed that he was unsure how we would manage things and that he envisioned having his future children with his family in Brazil one day. This revelation rocked my world and I have never experienced such pain. I could not eat, I lost 15 pounds and struggled to sleep. It was genuinely the lowest point I had ever reached, overwhelmed with fear of losing him. We eventually resolved our issues, but I was left with an abundance of fear. Before this incident, I believed we would get engaged that summer and I expected a proposal. Then suddenly there was the possibility of a breakup. While he insisted he did not want to end things, for the first time I was uncertain about his feelings for me. When he returned to the United States, things felt very strange between us. I felt terrible, plagued by the fear that he might leave me. Additionally, I felt sadness about not being engaged yet. When we returned to college, we attend different universities, the oddness continued. I felt insecure about his commitment to me, which increased my anxiety and made me feel as though I was annoying him. During this time, it was also my senior year of college. The campus atmosphere had changed considerably. My best friend and former roommate moved off campus and I hardly ever saw her. My sister, who is my current roommate, was dating someone on campus and was always with her boyfriend. Many of my close friends had graduated, leaving me feeling extraordinarily lonely. I remember eating by myself in my dorm every day. I felt like a weirdo and a loner, like there was something wrong with me. I had lost my best friend in the car accident and truly felt as if I had no one to spend time with. Although I could text and call my boyfriend, I had no one on campus to be with. I have always struggled with concerns about how I am perceived by others. I did not want to be seen as a girl with no social circle, no friends. Therefore, I decided to try to make some friends. I prayed to God to help me find companionship. However, I continued to find myself without friends, as it seemed all the girls on campus already had established social circles. After all, I was a senior and no longer perceived as someone needing to join small groups to make friends. I remember putting in a great effort to talk to people, but nothing seemed to work. I am a relatively quiet person who has always relied on others to engage with me to become friends. Thus, it felt odd for me to attempt to forge new friendships. One day, I was walking to class when a guy whom I had seen before introduced himself. He simply asked for my name and made the standard questions people typically ask. Later that day, I noticed that he added me on Instagram. I accepted his request, finding it intriguing. This may sound strange, but I have always assumed that when men do this, they have a crush or some interest, although I attend a Christian college and wondered if he was simply being friendly. As time went on, I posted an Instagram story about a Starbucks drink, asking which one was better and allowing people to vote. I remember he commented that neither was good and that Dunkin' was superior. I felt pleased that he commented, as it indicated he was paying attention to me and remembered who I was. We struck up a conversation and I told him that Starbucks was considerably better. He mentioned he had never tried Starbucks, so I suggested we go together for him to experience how much better it was than Dunkin'. I felt excited, thinking this could be my opportunity to make a friend. I have always found it easier to connect with men than women. Men are often more straightforward. If they think you are attractive, they are likely to want to be your friend. I assumed this was the case with him, that he likely had a crush on me, which was why he was engaging in conversation. I found it interesting, however, because my Instagram profile features numerous pictures of me with my boyfriend, including some of us kissing. Thus, I was uncertain about his intentions, as it was clear he knew I was in a relationship. The next day, I went home for the weekend and deleted the messages, opting not to text him that weekend to avoid any chance of my boyfriend seeing and becoming upset, as he does not want me to have male friends and has reacted negatively in the past if I texted any guy, even remotely. I returned to campus that week and reached out to him again. He asked how my weekend was, etc. I felt excited to potentially have a friend on campus, someone with whom I could spend time rather than being alone. I hoped that he would want to be friends. I recall texting him when he asked what I was up to. I replied that I was bored and studying and he invited me to study with him. I agreed and prepared to meet him. I remember putting on some makeup because I did not want him to think I looked unattractive or that I might scare him off as a friend. We met and studied together. He inquired about my summer, and I explained that it was awful due to losing my best friend. I also mentioned that it continued to be difficult after that because of everything going on with my boyfriend. I believe I shared this partly because it was the truth, partly to convey to him that I had a boyfriend, and partially because on some subconscious level I hoped it might make him more inclined to befriend me if he thought my boyfriend and I were having issues. I had no idea if he had a crush on me, but I knew many of my past male friends secretly harbored feelings for me, which they later confessed was the reason they wanted to be my friend. I think this is why I felt, well, I really desire a friend, so even if it is just a guy friend who has a secret crush, at least I will have a friend. I did not care about his intentions as long as I gained companionship. I was also aware that I did not find him attractive and would never want to date him, so I believed I was not doing anything wrong. I knew I would never break up with my boyfriend for him or cross any boundaries in my mind that would constitute cheating, such as flirting or anything physical. Therefore, I thought that if he indeed had a crush, he might want to be my friend more, and I could simply ensure I never reciprocated that crush. He then expressed his sympathy for me, and I found myself crying unexpectedly while discussing my feelings. I felt foolish for being so vulnerable, but it was such a challenging period in my life, reflecting on everything from that summer as it was traumatic for me. He gave me a hug goodbye, I think because he felt bad for me for crying. When he texted me afterward, I apologized for breaking down in front of him when he barely knew me. He reassured me that it was fine and expressed his gladness to be there to listen. I remember thinking he was a Christian and was likely just being kind and feeling sympathy for me. Days later, I ran into him while getting coffee on campus, and he struck up a conversation with me. I felt happy to have someone to drink coffee with. We talked about various topics, and I mentioned one of my female friends with whom he could potentially chat. He told me about his family and shared his celebrity crushes when I asked him about his type to encourage him to like my friend. He then inquired about mine. I told him a few names and wondered if he was doing this because he liked me. I consciously avoided flirting with him during our conversation. I later asked if he wanted to get Starbucks after class and he agreed, mentioning he would pick me up. On the way there, he casually talked about different subjects, including his hometown. Then he asked how my boyfriend and I were doing. I shared some of my concerns about our relationship. In hindsight, I realize I knew that talking about this could lead him to hope we would break up, which might open up a chance for him, but I was certain I would never leave my boyfriend. Thus, I did not think it was wrong to share. I enjoyed having someone listen to me and show me their attention and care. I would often follow up my concerns by stating that I loved my boyfriend and could not let him go, as these were genuinely true feelings. I admit I might have exaggerated some issues, presenting them as more serious than they genuinely were because I genuinely wanted to be with my boyfriend and marry him. I vaguely recall thinking that part of my frustration with my boyfriend stemmed from my desire for him to propose already because I was eager to marry him. At no point did I question whether I wanted to be with my boyfriend. Once again, I mentioned my female friend to him to ensure he understood I was trying to set him up with someone. I attempted to gauge his response to see if he rejected her, which could indicate he liked me. However, he claimed he liked her. I felt a little concerned that if they started dating, I would find myself in the same situation as before, watching him spend time with her while I felt overwhelmed with loneliness, much like I did with my sister and her boyfriend. This realization saddened me. I did not want him to date her, not because I desired to date him, but because if he were in a relationship, I would once again be left without anyone to hang out with. He paid for my coffee, which struck me as slightly odd, but my old male friend used to do the same. While we sat and sipped our coffee, I spilled some on my hand, and he cleaned it off with his finger, which I thought was peculiar. Yet I felt somewhat happy that he cared. I think I was deeply craving human contact and care. I never found him attractive. He was the opposite of my type. He also lent me his jacket as we were leaving because it was freezing outside. I refused to put it on as I felt that such gestures were reserved for my boyfriend. Instead, I rested it on my hands in the car as I did not want to seem rude. I attempted to set him up with another friend as well. I pondered the possibility of having him and my boyfriend meet someday. I hoped they could become friends, but I was uncertain how to navigate this without my boyfriend becoming upset about my male friend. I recall one time when we were texting, I sent him the softball roster. I am on the softball team and asked him which player he would prefer for me to set him up with. He replied that none of them were really his type, which made me contemplate whether he truly did not find me attractive. This was interesting because most of my male friends would have responded positively about one of them, suggesting they liked her but refrained due to my relationship status. I felt momentarily downcast, thinking perhaps I was unattractive, but then reassured myself that I did not want him anyway. The following week, I explained everything that had transpired to my boyfriend. I had researched online whether having a male friend was inappropriate, and many sources stated that secrecy was a problem, which prompted me to come clean. I did not want to do anything wrong or hurt my boyfriend. I loved him, I just desperately wanted a friend to spend time with. I also reflected that in the event of a breakup with my boyfriend, I would never date this friend. I simply wanted someone to be there for me. This male friend was entirely unattractive to me, and when I genuinely think back, I did not even really care about who he was as a person. I did not pay attention to what he said or what constituted his personality. I simply appreciated the attention he gave me. When I confided in my boyfriend, I immediately ceased communication with this guy. I noticed that I was indifferent to the loss of that friendship. It did not hurt me to cut him out of my life. I have been engulfed in fear after looking into the concept of cheating. In the moment, I never perceived myself as crossing any lines regarding infidelity, as I believed I was maintaining boundaries. But now I am filled with anxiety. I have been extremely distressed over the past year, waking up each morning plagued by apprehension about whether I have cheated. I have contemplated this constantly, fearing the implications of my actions. Story 2. My girlfriend's codependency became a heavy weight. I can't be your crutch, I told her. After 2 years of high school romance, I'm torn. What if I'm just throwing it all away? My heart says one thing, my mind another. Am I ready to let go? Hello, everyone. This is my first time posting here, but I am in desperate need of some help. I apologize in advance. I am a 20-year-old female, and I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, who is also 20 years old, for approximately 2 years now. If you want to call it that, we are high school sweethearts. We were each other's first real relationship, and yes, I am aware that we are still quite young. Our relationship was honestly pretty much as perfect as it could be. I guess that is to be expected during the honeymoon phase, but we were really solid. We took things slow for multiple reasons, one being that I am on the asexual spectrum. If you have an issue with that, please refrain from commenting. I already feel bad enough, and I began to develop feelings early on. Since we got together while we were still in high school, we were both living with our families and attending school. During that time, mainly the last year of high school, we were virtually inseparable. We spent a great deal of time together, went along on each other's family vacations, shared a common friend group, and did other activities together. For context, I have a complicated family and home life. There is no physical or real mental abuse, but my relationship with my mother is quite poor except when we are not living together. Yay. Over the last few years living in this house, my mental health has deteriorated with time, and I wanted to move out as quickly as possible. Originally, my plan was to travel after school, but financial constraints held me back, along with the fact that my girlfriend was rather clingy and anxious. I did not want to lose or disappoint her by being away from her for an extended period. Therefore, we looked for apartments together and moved in with each other a few months ago. It was quite a significant relocation, over 3 hours from home, along with a month-long renovation process. There was a lot of work, stress, and shopping involved. I understand that we are young and had not been together long at that point, believe me, I know. However, unless you can reverse time for me so that I can make different choices, I do not require any "I told you so" remarks, because I am already doing that enough to myself. I was caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to escape the situation at home while simultaneously believing that moving in together was the smartest decision, particularly for financial reasons, sharing all costs. However, the last few months have been quite bad, really, really bad. I am unsure when, how, or why it happened, but emotionally I subconsciously distance myself more and more from my girlfriend. I genuinely cannot identify when it occurred, and I have absolutely no idea what caused it, which makes this situation even more challenging. I am uncertain if perhaps I have fallen out of love or if I do not love her anymore. In other words, currently, I do not feel very good or loving feelings, and I am unsure if I am content enough with what this relationship can provide for me to fight for it when I am simply exhausted. My emotional distancing has also led us to a point where I can no longer be physically intimate with her again, regarding the asexual aspect. Initially, I started to enjoy some intimate activities with her, even though it was never something I needed to be happy, but now I feel physically distanced and uncomfortable with being physically intimate. I do not even feel comfortable making out beyond simple kisses. She needs this more than I do, and I am fearful that I will never want to be that close to her again. I also do not want her to stay with me if that is not enough for her, because I do not want to feel pressured into anything to make her happy. She is already unhappy with the current distance. I am also beginning to feel like I realize that she might be a bit too immature for this relationship. I am not quite sure how to articulate it best. She is so untouched by the struggles of the world and enjoys living simply, dreaming of a quiet suburban life with clear structures where nothing unexpected could induce her anxiety. That is not really my preference. I grew up in a rather wild family, full of traveling and unconventional experiences. I desire a vibrant life. I want to experience things and push past my fears to try new opportunities. While holding back to live the life she wants, I feel that she cannot provide me with what I need in return, at least not while we are living together. A few things I have recognized since things have deteriorated to the point where I had to confront my feelings. My girlfriend is too clingy and dependent on me. While I enjoy my time with her, I never needed her or felt that I could not live without her. I appreciate my alone time and could spend a considerable amount of time by myself. To be honest, I miss being alone since I did so frequently before meeting her. And I am genuinely independent because I have always had to be. She grew up in a sheltered environment, which I believe contributes significantly to her being unaccustomed to dealing with challenges on her own and why she constantly seeks me for support. This is fine in a relationship, of course, but only to an extent. She struggles to do things alone. Everything causes her anxiety, and she has never learned how to cope because she has always had someone else to help her or do it for her. Consequently, when she becomes overwhelmed with something, she panics to the extent that I feel compelled to assist her, which makes me her crutch, and she constantly relies on me. She also cannot be alone for long and clings to me, which was acceptable at first, but it has become overwhelming, or rather, I do not desire that as much anymore. She cannot spend time by herself, often experiences panic when alone, and begins overthinking, requiring me to comfort and reassure her. Lately, due to my uncertainty about everything, she has sought me out even more for reassurance. And because I do not want to lie to her, she is often disappointed when I cannot provide the support and affection she desires. She has significant anxiety overall and does not know how to manage it. I have suggested that she visit a therapist multiple times over the past year or so, and she still has not genuinely begun searching, instead coming to me to help calm her down. At times, I feel like a therapist trying to manage her issues for her. It is also important to note that I have experienced a previous friendship relationship that ended very poorly because the other person became dependent on me and had serious mental health struggles that I was the only one helping her with. I informed my girlfriend from the start that I did not want to be involved in a situation like that, and without my realizing it, it has turned into precisely that. She is just so passive. She acknowledges that she struggles with anxiety and that it is severe, yet she does nothing to remedy it. I understand that finding a therapist is not always easy, but she could at least search online, possibly even explore Reddit for tips and ways to improve. However, because she has me, and since she is not in a life-threatening situation and it could be worse, she does not actively attempt to change anything. She only makes an effort when there is an emergency. As I mentioned before, she has experienced a relatively easy and privileged life. She grew up in a nurturing home with a loving family, ample financial resources, and has not faced any significant hardships. Of course, that does not invalidate her problems. However, I often feel that she fails to recognize this privilege and desires to lead a comfortable, well-defined life. I often worry that she cannot understand my struggles, for instance, needing money because my family cannot fully support me, and the challenge of working while also studying will be incredibly difficult. She has never held a job, never needed one because her parents finance everything. While that is impressive for her, she simply does not comprehend what I am facing. I have realized that I again allowed someone to overstep my boundaries to avoid conflict or causing someone sadness. There are many instances and situations where I disregard my own comfort and well-being to support my girlfriend. For example, when I mention that I want to spend time alone, she immediately becomes upset, wondering if I do not want to be with her, and if she did something wrong, etc. Then, I feel guilty for making her sad and cannot spend my time alone without feeling anxious, so I stop asking for that time. Situations like these occur frequently. She is incredibly insecure about certain matters, and I feel that I cannot request her to suppress her feelings or hide her reactions. Still, I feel so cornered and pressured because her responses are so intense, and I invariably take responsibility for how she reacts. Overall, while I am by no means perfect or anything close, I believe she is emotionally immature or at least not truly mentally healthy. She easily takes offense or is hurt, gets lost in her feelings, and often spirals into larger issues during our arguments until they become significantly more complicated than they should be. She only realizes this once she calms down, regardless of how often I express that I do not want to talk while she is in that state, as it tends to exacerbate the situation. She then apologizes, but it recurs. I cannot blame her because those feelings are hers, and she should not suppress them or pretend to navigate situations. In any case, those are the most pressing issues, and as you can see, things are not good. We have discussed this, and she is desperate to remain together because she loves me so much. She has started to recognize her codependency, and she is beginning to improve mentally, even promising to seek help. I am just uncertain if that is sufficient. Perhaps I could move back home for a while, even if I am unhappy with my mother. and attempt a long-distance relationship to give it one last try while still allowing myself some space to grow as an individual. Maybe it seems obvious that I should end the relationship, but I am extremely uncertain. What if I am merely young and stressed at the moment, and things could improve again, leading me to throw away something good, someone who loves me so deeply? What if I never find someone who loves me like she does, respects my boundaries, such as regarding asexuality, and is so patient with me? I am not just ending a relationship, I am dismantling an entire life. Our beautiful apartment, everything we have built together, all that work and the stress of moving for nothing. Our families are intertwined, my brother loves her. Her parents have become like second parents to me and I care for them greatly. What if I lose everything for what ends up being a trivial decision? What if things could improve if I fought hard enough? At the same time, I do not want to simply settle. I do not want merely good enough. I desire something grand, thrilling, and exciting. I do not want to feel held back. I do not wish to waste time trying to repair something that only causes me pain and may ultimately not work out. I am also incredibly anxious about how others will react. I will not disclose to others why I feel this way. I do not want people to form negative opinions about her. However, without context, others may perceive me as throwing everything away because I have fallen out of love. I am concerned about being judged constantly. I dread the "I told you so and what did you expect" remarks because obviously this was not what I wanted. I feel that an outside perspective could benefit me, and at least here I can discuss everything openly. If anyone can provide me with advice, it would be greatly appreciated. I am struggling mentally and falling into old, unhealthy habits again, and I cannot continue being this unhappy. Something must change, I just do not know what. I also apologize for 1, the length and for the disorganized expression, and for 2, any mistakes. English is not my first language and I am not proficient at grammar. Story 3. My husband's secret Twitter account revealed a double life filled with explicit desires he never shared with me. "You can't raise another man's child," he warned after my unexpected pregnancy, leading me to make a heart-wrenching choice. Now, with my caring boyfriend, I struggle with the ache for the family I wanted. Can I ever reconcile love and longing? Almost a year ago, when I was 26 years old, I had an instinct and decided to check my husband's phone, which is something I rarely do. However, whenever I have done so in the past, I discovered something that hurt me, and this time was no exception. On Twitter, I found out he had a private second account that I had never known about. The handle was Born to Bottom, and it was filled with reposts of transgender pornography. He had made explicit comments under many of the videos, addressing the women in ways he had never spoken to me. We had been together for 8 years and I was aware of his preferences regarding gender and sex. He had asked me to peg him a few times, and although I attempted it, I did not enjoy the experience. I felt uncomfortable and did not like being dominant. He respected my feelings and indulged in his interests privately. Therefore, his kinks were not the issue. The problem was the secrecy, the double life he had created, and the comments and persona he maintained online, expressing things to strangers that he never communicated to me. During that time, our sexual life was nearly non-existent, perhaps once every 6 weeks, and it felt more like an obligation than a passionate connection. He claimed he was not attracted to men or transgender women outside of pornography. He asserted that it was purely fantasy. He insisted that he was neither gay nor bisexual. Still, the disparity between what he expressed online and how he treated me in real life was painful. It made me feel unwanted, unattractive, and completely out of sync. In addition, he was not a supportive partner emotionally. He rarely complimented me, maybe 6 times in a year. He did not plan simple dates, did not offer affection, and never performed small, loving gestures. Everything I received from him emotionally felt like I had to beg for it. My love languages are affection, words of affirmation, and attention. His were different. It reached a point where it felt like we were merely roommates. When I discovered the secret Twitter account, something shifted within me. I was already feeling angry, anxious, and unloved, but that finalized my decision. I made up my mind to move out. I found my own apartment, financed everything myself, and left. However, I did not leave without warning. I communicated clearly I wanted to return, but we needed therapy, more affection, and a peaceful home. I needed him to make an effort. I gave him 3 months and even reminded him, offering to organize everything and pay for it. Yet he consistently fell short. I do not believe this was due to lack of care. Rather, I think he is simply not adept at prioritizing emotional matters. During that time, I had a wedding to photograph. One of the groomsmen, who was 29 years old, was someone I had a fling with in high school. We hardly spoke that day, but afterward I sent him a couple of pictures of himself and made a joke, leading to us reconnecting. It felt effortless. He asked if I was still married, and I replied that it was complicated, which it truly was. From that point, we communicated daily, and I began to realize just how emotionally starved I had been. This man listened to me, made me laugh, and gave me genuine attention. I officially ended things with my husband and began seeing this new man more seriously. My husband was heartbroken. He spiraled into emotional instability for months, experiencing several panic attacks, cries for help, and serious depression. Despite everything, he still supported me. He assisted with bills when I needed help. He was always present and wanted to resolve our issues. He begged me to come back. Meanwhile, my new relationship blossomed in many ways. He was everything I had wanted in a man for 8 years and more: thoughtful, affectionate, emotionally available, patient, and kind. He lived 3.5 hours away, so I did most of the traveling, but I did not mind. I chose him repeatedly, even as I witnessed how deeply my husband was suffering. Then I became pregnant. Initially, I attempted to be happy, but deep down, I felt devastated. I did not want to have a baby. I felt torn between the life I had and the life I might still have had with my husband. Thus, I confided in my husband rather than my boyfriend about the pregnancy. He stated that if I had the baby, he could never accept it, believing it would destroy any chance of reconciling. He admitted it would be incredibly challenging to raise another man's child and treat them fairly, given the pain he had experienced. I ultimately decided to have an abortion. I concealed this from my boyfriend at first, but eventually I admitted it to him. I also confessed that I had been intimate with my husband one time during this period. It was a mistake and I took responsibility for it, aware that it might end my new relationship. However, he forgave me, expressing that he loved me and would remain despite the pain and betrayal, but cautioned that he could not endure this situation again. Currently, I am still with my boyfriend, who continues to treat me with immense love and care. He pays attention to every detail about me, surprises me, and makes me feel safe and cherished. He provides me with the kind of love I had desperately sought in my marriage, yet I still miss my husband every single day. I miss the comfort, the family unit, and the shared humor. I miss the ease of co-parenting without managing two households. I long for the man I once envisioned my husband being. Moreover, it is difficult to determine whether he has truly changed or if I am simply romanticizing our past relationship. I have observed some growth in him. He is on antidepressants, more socially engaged and more involved, but he still grapples with stress, lacks patience with our children, and does not possess the emotional awareness I require. Additionally, I must mention that my husband's means of stress relief involves playing video games on his computer. At one point, he would become so engrossed in gaming that he could not hear our son cry or respond to me when I spoke to him. He would play for 6 to 12 hours at a time, which began to irritate me. Eventually, I would snap at him in frustration, but he did begin to moderate his gaming time over time. He also lost many of his friends, likely because he stopped playing games and distanced himself from a couple with whom we used to socialize. I did confront them, however, due to their offensive behavior towards me. He claims that he does not have many friends now because he dislikes their behavior, stating that they can be passive-aggressive, which is why he does not make the effort to contact them. This became problematic for me because I could see that he was spending nearly all of his time at home, avoiding outside activities. I offered to take him on various vacations, but he consistently preferred to remain at home. He experienced severe social anxiety, so even a simple trip to the store would overwhelm him, prompting him to act out. He used to say that his mood was perpetually like that because he was overwhelmed with everything: work, caring for the children, cooking, cleaning, and constantly doing favors for me. However, his social anxiety improved with medication. He now visits stores, interacts with coworkers, and even goes out to bars a couple of times a week. He states that he is pushing himself to step outside his comfort zone, tackling small tasks like using public restrooms or engaging more with others. He is not a horrible person. He is, in fact, the best person I have ever met. He is humorous, caring, an empath, and genuinely supportive. Nevertheless, the reality is that he struggles with prioritizing certain aspects, particularly emotional ones. I am confident he would never cheat on me, and he always takes care of me while providing for our family. However, there are moments when he is harsh, dismissive, and lacks patience with our children. He is sometimes too stressed to even engage with them, creating a disconnect between us. I find myself at a point where I am uncertain about what to do. He has the potential to be great, but what if he has not genuinely changed? What if he still does not understand how to show affection in the manner I need? It feels selfish, yet it is incredibly disheartening to be with someone when you do not feel valued. Living with my boyfriend now creates a stark contrast, and the thought of leaving this situation feels almost seamless. It would not cause any significant disruption for anyone involved. My husband has been vocal about his desires, expressing that he wants all of me, my quirks, attitude, and behavior. He recognizes who I am and still wishes to be with me, even proposing therapy to navigate our reactions and feelings. Despite everything, he remains willing to make it work. I do care for my boyfriend, but the absence of my husband is a persistent ache. I doubt this feeling will simply dissipate with time, and the thought of witnessing him move on while I continue to miss him fills me with dread. However, a significant concern lingers. What if reconciling never results in the kind of loving and affectionate home I want my children to experience? I am intentionally trying to break the cycle of my mother's mistakes. Her departure from my father when I was 14 and her subsequent affairs with married men had a profound effect on me. I do not want my children to view a fractured relationship as normal. I long for them to witness the kind of marriage I yearned for while growing up: a mom and dad who adored each other, a partnership filled with love and simple joys such as dancing in the kitchen. That was not the reality with my husband before. Compounding the situation, my husband's friends and family have made their disapproval of my decision to leave him abundantly clear. His family, with whom I have never been close and who struggle with alcoholism, resent me for taking their son away. One even became verbally aggressive with me during my pregnancy. Regrettably, even my own family has sided with my husband, echoing the sentiment that couples should work on their marriage and not give up. It is important to note that my parents do not have the type of relationship that I want my children to consider normal either. Moreover, none of these individuals are aware of one of the underlying reasons for my departure, a reason I have deliberately kept private to protect my husband from their judgment. I have spent this entire time shielding him. It seems as though everyone has made me feel wrong for desiring to be loved and cherished, portraying my longing as a sudden and irrational whim, despite my years of pleading before I finally left. Even then, I provided him with an additional 3 months to truly attempt to make change. I have invested considerable effort into making the best choices I can, including creating pros and cons lists, praying, conversing, and writing. I have made mistakes in the past, and I am determined to avoid jeopardizing my future happiness.